Ernst, you have 2 minutes.
Yes, I made it through. I just want to shout out, you guys should probably get up and take a stretch break, but you can do that while still listening to me. This is Rose, and I'm a homeowner and a resident of Sacramento. I actually recently read the Sacramento Sheriff's Office. They have a motto, and their motto is service with concern. So my question is, concern for who? I would like to also ask who the proposed budget concerns and who does it ignore. What do we value and who do we value? Does it cost more in the long term to be preventative or reactive? What would our community look like if we focused on actual care and prevention? If people have a place to live and a place to poop, guess what? You don't have to spend thousands on cleanups, those 600 bags that were cleaned up, and you don't have to have people blocking the sidewalks. If we fund public health services, we give people the mental health care and wellness support they need before they have a crisis. If we have accountability in the departments, guess what? The county won't have to continue paying for bad behavior lawsuits in various departments that amount to millions of dollars and unknown amounts of future funds. Millions of dollars. Guess what? We have community groups that have already stepped up during this pandemic and before to provide the services we are asking for, so fund those. It already exists. I actually agree with the previous statement by Scott Jones when he said the sheriff can get out of the homeless crisis business. He also said that 120 calls a day can be routed to another department that would be better equipped to handle them. So I ask you to take him up on that offer immediately and reallocate the funds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Family gets paid off. I want you to ask them where those funds are in the budget. And if you don't know, Phil and Kennedy and Natoli, the only three of you who have questions in regards to this budget, I want you to really think about when bad things happen on Scott Jones's watch, where does that money come from?
Please start with your comments. You have 2 minutes, and please turn the meeting off in the background.
Go ahead, please.
Do not give extra funds to the sheriff. We saw the body cam footage on the news when Stephon Clark was murdered, yet the officers remain employed. So don't ask for more body cam support. Accountability comes from policy, not increasing budget. Restore the $104 million that was taken from the CARES Act funding. The millions in budget cuts must come out of the sheriff's budget since it is the largest portion. Absolutely zero cuts should come from health services while we are still in a pandemic, for goodness sake. We are also recovering from the wildfires and smoke. Your constituents have been protesting every weekend for months, demanding to divest from cops and invest in community. The safest communities do not have the most cops, they have the most resources, and you starve us of these resources with a budget focused on police and prisons. That presentation from Sheriff Jones was a joke. Screenshots of news headlines in other cities and photos of cop cars on fire do not count as evidence. Absolutely disgraceful you let that racist sham continue. There's a quote that comes to mind right now. Apparently, some quirk in human nature allows even the most unspeakable acts of evil to become banal within minutes, provided only that they occur far enough away to pose no personal threat. The police violence and housing crisis in this county are terrifying to encounter. It seems none of you have experienced these things recently since you continue to consider funding their expansion. The Sheriff's Department is used to shield comfortable citizens from the realities of decades of local government negligence so that this violence stays out of the personal realm. You can stop this by supporting the people's budget now. Callers in support of expanding the sheriff's budget lack understanding of our county's current spending and community safety. They know only a concern for personal safety. They cite anecdotal evidence and fear of a future without law enforcement as the reason, not because the sheriff has effectively reduced housing issues, violent crime, or any other threats to their safety. They have safety now. The people advocating defund do not have that same safety. Right now, people are dying from the police violence, from lack of stable housing, and a lack of appropriate health care. Again, support the people's budget. I yield my time.
Thank you.
Out of necessity. A necessity that could be alleviated if we put money into prevention instead of punitive violence. Police do not stop crime. They literally come after the fact. They do not stop anything. And as many of us know, they don't even help us afterward. Taking money out of actual resources to help people and putting it toward cops directly means that crime will go up. People will be struggling more. Police will have more riot gear to test out on our communities. This is reductive circular reasoning where you always want to militarize state agents and people become more despondent, and then you have to militarize the state agents even harder. We break the cycle by caring about people, not by creating a dystopian military police state. And as a final remark, Nav Gill blatantly lied about funding the climate plan. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, yes, my name is Michelle Wright, and I'm a District 3 resident. I first want to comment on Sheriff Jones' presentation of random headlines about crime in cities that just defunded their law enforcement. It's very laughable because obviously defunding forward-looking budgets would not cause a sudden increase in crime. And I honestly can't believe that this was his idea of a compelling argument of why we shouldn't defund law enforcement. Furthermore, the lack of data collected and compiled relating to mental health-related incidents further shows his ineptness of this department. This is 2020. Data-driven decision-making is the standard, and the sheriff's display of fear-mongering rhetoric is dangerous.
Hi, good evening. Courtney Hansen, resident of District 1. I need you to know that Sheriff Jones' news articles are, in fact, from far-right conspiracy theory outlets, including Breitbart, whose founder was just charged with fraud, and a journalist whose focus is, quote, radical left and Islamic terrorism. He's insulting your intelligence. Scott Jones is comfortable with body cams now because 5 years have passed since his reform became popular, and now we have data proving they are completely ineffective. Thank you, Natoli and Kennedy, for asking crucial questions. Overall, I am extremely disappointed that this board is considering a business-as-usual budget when we are at this historical juncture. The People's Budget had a press conference this morning uplifting the needs and priorities of over 2,500 survey constituents. When a formerly incarcerated woman spoke about how 3 years in our jail system exacerbated her mental health conditions, I couldn't stop thinking about how this board is considering hiring 42 new officers instead of funding community-based programs like Mental Health First. When anti-police terror advocates talked about the extremely high rate at which people with disabilities are killed by police, I couldn't stop thinking about the head of the Sheriff's Association and how he tweeted that if you don't follow an officer's orders, you deserve to be executed on the spot. When housing experts reminded us that it is sheriff's deputies who forcibly remove us from our homes when this board fails to protect renters, I couldn't stop thinking about NAP's recommendation that you deny a minuscule $19,000 to Fair Housing Service for a renter's helpline. You are part of a defund movement, whichever way you go. You can either defund our life-affirming services, or you can make a dent in the sheriff's bloated budget. We are begging you for food and housing security, and you're proud of body cameras and mental health-oriented jails. I've studied incarceration for 10 years, and throwing money at the problem will not work. And I know we'll discuss item 2 tomorrow, but while everyone is listening, I want to flag that this board will be considering $66 million.
Can I get your concluding remarks, please?
Without any resemblance of jail population reduction plan in place. We need you to slow this spending down and bring us.
Can I get your final remarks, please?
To talk about decarceration.
Thank you.
Our lifespan, our mental and physical health, our housing. So please adopt a budget that reflects and prioritizes the needs of your constituents, the needs of Sacramento County. All public comments tonight, whether to support the sheriff or defund the sheriff, are in support of decreasing crime. We want to feel safe in our communities. That's why we're calling. And it's your choice to decide if you want to continue to fund traditional public safety. That obviously isn't working.
Can I have your concluding remarks, please?
Or invest in services that prevent and recover and help us recover from crime. And my last remark is that Scott Jones' presentation was made up of Facebook clickbait, and the People's Budget presentation was made up of data from a survey distributed to 2000.
Where do you think this supposed crime wave that the sheriff and his supporters are so afraid, where do you think that's going to come from? We all know that comes from, that's directly correlated to divestment and community processes. So like the People's Budget, says support community priorities, make those investments now, because if you don't, you're going to have to pay for it later. And that's just period point blank. Good night.